So I have to just preface this video by mentioning the fact that as someone who has been a Kansas City Chiefs fan since the Carl Peterson era, the very notion that I trust a general manager the way that I trust Brett Veach almost makes my skin crawl. Look, do I feel completely confident in the fact that Clyde Edwards-Helaire, some mixture of Clyde Edwards-Helaire, Deneric Prince, and Lamichael Pirine will be able to carry the Kansas City Chiefs after Isaiah Pacheco is, taken out of the game for a little bit? No, I do not feel confident in that at all. Brett Veach seems to feel fairly confident in that he did not address the running back position in the NFL draft at all. Instead, he brought in two UDFAs that I think have a strong claim towards playing time for the Kansas City Chiefs. Carson Steele, who we had a video about yesterday, and today, Emani Bailey. Now, Emani Bailey is not Jerick McKinnon. Jerick McKinnon was a super athlete. This is easy to forget because Jerick McKinnon entered the NFL about a decade ago, right? Jerick McKinnon had a 4.41 40. Jerick McKinnon had a 40.5-inch vertical. Jerick McKinnon, little Jerick McKinnon, the Jet, as you remember him. Jerick McKinnon put up 32 reps on the bench press with 225 pounds. Guys, that's more than Kingsley Suamataia, right? Kingsley put up 30, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So Jerick McKinnon was a super athlete. Emani Bailey is not that. Now, by the time Jerick McKinnon became the Jerick McKinnon that you and I know and love, he was not running a 4.41 40. Probably he did not have a 40.5-inch vertical. And almost definitely he was no longer bench pressing 225 pounds for 32 reps. So there's that. If you want someone who is going to emulate the style of play of Jerick McKinnon, it might be Emani Bailey. Now, this video is the 16th video, I believe, in a playlist on the channel called 2024 Draft Picks, which obviously covers more than just the draft picks, as we are here with the UDFA as well. This video will also include 3 portions: a who portion, where we talk about who is Emani Bailey, a strengths and weaknesses, where we go over a little bit of the game of Emani Bailey, and finally an analysis portion where I talk about how I think this player is going to cope, fit in, do things for the Kansas City Chiefs. Now, the first thing that's going to be obvious to you here is that the person on your screen is neither A, Emani Bailey, nor B, a Texas horned frog. Here's what happened. I made that graphic late at night. For me, late at night is about 2 in the afternoon. I have to be at work at 9 p.m. I was under the impression, for some reason, in late night delirium, that Emani Bailey went to West Virginia. That is supposed to be a mountaineer, and that I don't know where that. Now it's too late for me to go back and change the graphics, so I apologize. But for now, that rugged-looking gentleman with loose boots and an affinity for paracord is going to represent the Texas Horned Frogs as well as Emani Bailey. I'm sorry. Emani Bailey is 5'7". That puts him in the 2nd percentile, along with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who are both lying about their height and are probably 5'5". He is 202 pounds, which is in the 20th percentile, so he's a robust little guy. He ran a 4.61 40-yard dash, which is 33rd percentile. He had a relatively quick 1.57 10-yard split on that 40-yard dash, which is 63rd percentile. And he had a vertical leap of 33.5 inches, which is 37th percentile. He had a 116-inch broad jump, which puts him in the 34th percentile. One thing that is going to stick out immediately upon realizing these numbers is that these are the reasons that Emani Bailey fell out of the draft. It was not his performance on the field, which we will get to in a moment on that right half of the screen. It was these numbers and measurables exclusively. Now, it needs to be said, however, that these numbers do not preclude your success at the NFL level, but probably they put a little bit of a damper on what it is that will be your ceiling in a league that is dominated by absolute physical freaks. Guys sneak through all the time with measurables such as this and end up being successful at the NFL level, but it is less likely than not, right? So on that right half of the screen there, we're looking at the player who is Emani Bailey. What was Emani Bailey doing in the numbers department in college? Well, in 2021, which was his final season at Louisiana, he had 102 carries for 642 yards, which is good, by the way, for a 6.3-yard average. That is stellar. He also had 8 touchdowns. He added 15 receptions for 153 yards, which is a 10.2-yard average as well. The next season, he transferred to TCU, whereby he had 31 attempts, for 250 yards and 2 touchdowns. 31 attempts for 250 yards is good for an 8.1-yard average. And he did play 14 games that season, so he was not the featured back. He was stretching those 31 carries over 14 games. He also added 7 receptions for 43 yards, which is good for a 6.1-yard average reception. Now, he really broke out in 2023 at TCU, having 223 carries for 1,209 yards, which is good for a 5.4-yard average and 8 touchdowns. Also, he added 25 receptions for 184 yards and a touchdown. That is good for 7.4 yards per carry. So the stuff that Emani Bailey did on the field tells you that he is a football player. The measurables suggest that he is likely to struggle at the NFL level. It does not they do not guarantee that he will struggle at the NFL level. Moving on to his strengths and weaknesses, I'm going to start actually with the number 3 weakness here, because we have seen that with Andy Reid, this could be a showstopper. A stat that comes to us from NFL.com. Emani Bailey has 3 fumbles over his last 254 carries. Big Red will absolutely myrtleize your hopes of playing in the NFL if you drop his football. That could be a game stopper before anything even kicks off. Now, for the strengths, he is something, again, like we have seen in many of the UDFAs, of a conundrum. When you look at number 2 on strengths versus number 2 on weaknesses, it seems to be an idea that clashes. How could a player have good acceleration and bad speed? And when you watch him, he doesn't have a first gear. Neither does he have a third gear. He's stuck in second gear from the snap of the ball to wherever that play ends up. And oftentimes, we saw with those numbers, oftentimes those plays end up in the end zone. One thing that I will note is a little bit counter to Carson Steele that we talked about yesterday. I talked about how Carson Steele likes to take these sort of bending angles everywhere. Emani Bailey is one direction. He's north and south. he really doesn't like to mess around. So he has a very loose running style, which I think probably contributes to his issues of ball security, but he does not play around with angles, I guess might be the best way to say it. The moment he sees daylight, he's running towards it. He is not overthinking things from that regard. And so that sounds like a slight, he's not overthinking things. It's really not. You will see players overthink things all the time in the NFL. I know I kind of give Travis Kelce a bit of a hard time on this channel. Not that he cares, I'm sure. But there are times. How many times last season did you yell at Travis Kelce that no, he's not Tyreek Hill, right? Catch the ball and move forward. Do not dance. Emani Bailey doesn't really seem to dance all that much if there's an opportunity to be taken on the field. Now I'm getting things way out of whack. The number one strength that Emani Bailey has is his vision. He can see where the play is developing. He understands what he needs to do. And guys, that sounds simple, but when there are 22 grown men on the field all running different directions, it's very difficult to keep that in check. And then I mentioned down there at number 3 on the strengths that he is smooth. This sort of plays into his instant acceleration. You just never really notice the guy struggling on the field. He doesn't struggle when he's breaking tackles, he breaks the tackle. He doesn't struggle when he's running past someone, he runs past them. There are times where he gets tackled, obviously. There are times where he doesn't run past someone, obviously. But he looks the same all the time. One of the things that I remember from the late 90s is a wide receiver named Jimmy Smith who played for the Jaguars, and everyone talked about how difficult it was to guard Jimmy Smith because all of his routes looked the same in the first 5 to 10 yards. You just didn't know what route he was running, so you had to play him honest every time. Emani Bailey is kind of like that. On the football field, he always looks like he is running the same play. Now, those first 2 weaknesses, but the last 2 that we have to address there on the right side of the screen, size and speed. This is the old Kendall Gammon line, I wasn't big, but I was slow. Emani Bailey does not have a top gear. Somehow he still runs past people. And it is strange that in a sport where basically every weight room you go into where there are football players training, you will see the mantra bigger, faster, stronger. Note that the first 2 words in that mantra are bigger and faster. Somehow, a guy that is very small and very slow, not very, very slow, but very slow. I mean, 4.61, that is really not fast. Somehow he ran for 1,209 yards. Now, we've seen this before, and that leads us to the analysis portion of this. I opened this video up by talking about how Emani Bailey is the same kind of brand of football player as Jerick McKinnon, even if Jerick McKinnon was a super athlete, and Emani Bailey is not. He is just a small, elusive type of back who really looks like he could be dangerous in the Kansas City Chiefs passing game. But, Jerick McKinnon was a little bit taller. That's not the biggest sin in the world for a running back. Jerick McKinnon was a little bit heavier. 209 pounds compared to 202 by Emani Bailey. And we've already talked about how Jerick McKinnon was very much faster, very much more explosive, and had a whole lot more reps on the bench. Well, I don't know what Emani Bailey did on the bench press, but Jerick McKinnon did 32. I imagine if Emani Bailey did 32 reps on the bench press, we would have heard about it. Kind of the point I'm getting to is we think of Jerick McKinnon as the skinny little scat back, but he's 2 inches taller and 7 pounds heavier than Emani Bailey. But let me read the numbers of another do-it-all back from the college level, and let's see if maybe there are some similarities here. The mystery back in question was 5'7" and 1/4 inches compared to Emani Bailey's 5'7". 207 pounds compared to Emani Bailey's 202. He ran a 4.57 40-yard dash, a little bit quicker than Emani Bailey's 4.61, but nobody is going to venture to split those hairs. Ran a 1.60 10-yard split compared to Emani Bailey's 1.57. He had a 39.5-inch vertical compared to Emani Bailey's 33.5. And he had a 123-inch broad jump compared to 116 by Emani Bailey. Some of you are right there with me right now. The mystery back in question that is at some points stunningly close to Emani Bailey is in fact Clyde Edwards-Helaire, a running back who was stunningly productive in college when you compare him to his physical profile. Now, here's what I'll say. Clyde Edwards-Helaire gets quite a bit of guff from the entire Chiefs community, and myself included, even though I defended him foolhardily on this channel for quite some time. But if the Kansas City Chiefs really got a running back through undrafted free agency who could put up 803 yards, 4 touchdowns, and add an additional 297 yards and a touchdown in his rookie season in Emani Bailey, that would be an absolute win. Do not forget, this is a player that is coming to Kansas City for all intents and purposes absolutely for free. Now, unfortunately, that rookie year was the high water mark for Clyde Edwards-Helaire, and it has been downhill ever since then. He followed that up in 2021 with 517 yards, 2022 with 302 yards, and last season had just 223 yards for the Kansas City Chiefs. That said, until last season, Clyde Edwards-Helaire had maintained an average above 4 yards every year of his career. Last season, he averaged just 3.2, but as a rookie, it was 4.4, and in his sophomore and third season in the NFL, he averaged 4.3 yards per carry. Not earth-shattering stuff, but definitely good enough to keep the chains moving. First down, 4.4 yards. Second down, 4.4 yards. Third down, 4.4 yards. You have a first. Now, I will say that I do like the Emani Bailey addition. I do think that there is an NFL player in Emani Bailey. What I think this is going to come down to for him this season is training camp. What does he look like catching the ball? What does he look like in pass protection? If he can ace those two tests, he will be, in my opinion, the third running back for the Kansas City Chiefs, maybe the fourth running back for the Kansas City Chiefs. There is always some question about that numbers game, but that comes with a caveat that Carson Steele / Deneric Prince fails one of those tests. Carson Steele and Deneric Prince are both bigger than Emani Bailey. Depending on where you find Carson Steele's 40-yard dash, he is faster than Emani Bailey. Deneric Prince is himself a 4.41 guy. But if Emani Bailey looks as good catching out of the backfield as it seems he might, it will be very tempting for the Kansas City Chiefs to want him on the field in some capacity. Otherwise, I think that this will be a redshirt year for him on the practice squad. I think he is a player the Chiefs could slide through the waiver wire because there's just so many running backs in the NFL. And if he refines a couple aspects of his game, I think that this could be a player who ends up being a running back in the stable going forward for the Kansas City Chiefs. That's all I have for this video. If you like or appreciate what I do here on the channel, hitting the like button really does help me out, as it tells YouTube to share this video with other Kansas City Chiefs fans. If you find yourself here by chance but not design, consider hitting the subscribe button in order to stick around for more Kansas City Chiefs content. The Kansas City Chiefs are the only thing that I cover on this channel, and I hope to have you back for the next one.